Hello everybody, welcome back to Popped In, your home for all things pop culture. And today, as you can see, we're doing another sports video, or NFL video, and this time we're doing another tier list. The last one we did was just ranking all the starting quarterbacks based on how they've played so far in the 2021 season. But we're going to be doing things a little bit differently this time. We're going to be doing it based on the quarterback's mobility. So, yeah, S tier is going to be the best runners in the league. And D tier is going to be the ones who might be slower than a turtle if a turtle tried to play in the NFL. So, yeah, that's pretty much the premise. So let's go and get in. And probably the first time he'll ever be in the bottom tier is Tom Brady because, I mean, he has that a couple run. Like, he had a 10-yard run against the Giants where, he showed off his limited mobility, but still, Tom Brady deserves in D tier. He does not run a lot, and for good reason. But yeah, Tom Brady goes into D tier. Then we have Joe Burrow. Now this is a tough one because he was actually a pretty good runner before his injury, but after he got injured and his leg got messed up, he hasn't ran a lot, and I'm sure one because having surgery on your leg probably limits your mobility quite a bit, and he's also a little fearful, I feel, of potentially re-injuring himself. So he would have been in A tier before his injury, but I'm still going to put him in. I'll still give him the benefit of the doubt and put him in B tier. He has had a few runs this year since he came back, but he hasn't been as good as he was previously, and I don't think he will be. But Joe Burrow belongs in B tier for right now. Then we have Dak Prescott, who, similar to Burrow, he seems to be a little nervous because of his injury, but nowhere near as Burrow, in my opinion. He still runs. They call run plays for him. So I think Dak belongs in A tier. He's a good runner, but not like top of the pack like some other players are. Then we have, again, I'm going to count this as Taylor Heinicke because Fitzpatrick has missed pretty much the whole season. Taylor Heinicke, I feel, is a bit of an underrated runner. People don't really look at him for his mobility, but he can scramble around pretty good and pick up yards. I think he goes into A tier. He's a pretty good mobile quarterback. Then we have Patrick Mahomes, kind of similar to Dak. He can run, he just doesn't do it a lot. But I put him in A tier. Not quite B tier below, but he's definitely not S tier. Then we have Tyrod Taylor. He probably would have been S potentially earlier in his career, but he doesn't run as much, but he still can get it done. So I'll put Tyrod in A tier. Sam Darnold, I put him in B tier. He's kind of similar to Burrow. He doesn't tick off a lot, but he did at one point lead the league in rushing touchdowns this year before he got injured and stuff. But yeah, Darnold, he can run quite a bit. That was shown, I believe it was last year when he had that real long run against the Broncos, like a 60-yard touchdown run, I believe. So Darnold does have wheels, but they're just not on the level of these other quarterbacks, in my opinion. Then we have Jared Goff, who he can have some runs. There's one game early in the season he had like an almost 30-yard run, I'm pretty sure, like in the 20s in terms of yardage. But yeah, he's not gonna do that very often. He may have like one. I think that was his longest run in his career. But kind of like Brady, I think if he has to run, he will do better than Brady. So for that, I'll put him in C tier. He's not quite D tier, but yeah, C tier is where I feel he belongs. Then we have, again, I'll count this as Aaron Rodgers, and he still has the wheels on him. He can take off. He's had a couple runs where he's ran for in the teens, but I don't know if he probably would have been A tier at his peak, and I don't think he can quite run quite like that anymore. So I'll put him in B tier, but he still can take off and go. Then we have Zach Wilson, which in college he seemed to do it pretty decently, but just in the NFL, he has not ran a lot, which obviously as a rookie, he probably wants to focus on his passing ability more than his rushing ability, but he just does not do a lot of running in the NFL, which he has been injured the past couple games. But just checking his stats for his rushing so far in his rookie season, and through the 6 games that he started, he's had just 8 runs for 22 yards, so not very great, which I will put him in C because I think he can take off if he has to, but he just doesn't do it a lot. So yeah, he goes to C tier. Then we have Russell Wilson, who I'm wanting to put him in S tier, but I think he's kind of similar to Dak and Mahomes. If he does run, he can do it. He hasn't done it a lot this season, but I think he's shown he can be an S tier runner. But I don't know, he just doesn't scream S tier, like top of the pack like he used to be. So Russell Wilson will go into A tier. Then we have Daniel Jones, which this is an interesting one because a lot of people kind of slept on his running ability, but after an ad popped up. After he kind of broke out and was their leading rusher for a couple weeks this year, he's kind of caught people's attention, and I think Daniel Jones goes into S tier. The only time he may appear in S tier on a tier list, but his rushing ability, I think Daniel Jones is definitely one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the league. So yeah, Daniel Jones, his rushing ability puts him in S tier for this tier list. Then we have Kirk Cousins, kind of similar to Jared Goff. He had I think a 30-plus yard run earlier this season, but again, I think that may be the longest of his career, and he can run, and he's a pretty tough runner too. Like, he'll take a hit if he has to, but he's just not going to do it a lot. So I think Kirk Cousins will go into C tier. Then we have Josh Allen. He's one of those, kind of like Daniel Jones, a big runner who, like, he's not like as escapable. Is that a word? Not as escapable as like a Lamar Jackson, but just his prowess in running. I think Josh Allen deserves to go into S tier. He's kind of focused more on passing as opposed to rushing the last couple years, but he definitely still can run, and he might potentially even be. I don't think he's their leading rusher. I think Singletary or Moss have done more than him overall in the season, but kind of like Daniel Jones, he could be pretty close to the running backs on the team in terms of his rushing stats, at least. Then we have Justin Herbert, kind of similar to Dak and Mahomes. If he has to, which he showed it in that Steelers game, he can take off and run. He almost had 100 yards rushing, but he's just not going to do it a lot. So yeah, Justin Herbert goes into A tier. Ryan Tannehill, like, when you watch him run, he doesn't look like he's that fast, but he's like, when you watch him run, he just looks like a average quarterback, like Goff or Cousins or somebody. But you look at him and he's actually like outrunning defensive players and stuff. So I think Ryan Tannehill belongs in A tier in terms of rushing for quarterbacks. Tua seemed to be more mobile in college, kind of like Joe Burrow after he got injured in college with his hip injury. He seems to have not rushed as much, but he still does it a bit. I think he belongs in B tier. Then we have the Saints quarterback duo. I'm going to be basing this off of Jameis Winston. If it's Taysom Hill, probably go to A tier, but Jameis, I feel, probably B tier. He can run it pretty well. He's kind of one of those more under the radar rushers. Like, you aren't going to think he's going to do a whole lot, but he'll surprise you with his legs. Then Kyler Murray, without a doubt, S tier. Probably either number 1 or number 2. It depends where you put Lamar Jackson, but Kyler is definitely one of the top 2 best rushing quarterbacks in the NFL. So that's all I got to say about him. Then you have Derek Carr. Again, he's similar to Cousins and Carr in terms of his rushing. Yeah, he goes to C tier. Jalen Hurts, again, another one, very good runner. Top 5 in my book. Kind of similar to Daniel Jones, but he's got more of the escapability aspect of like a Kyler or Lamar or somebody. So yeah, he goes to S tier. Then we have Baker. He's similar to these here. I'll put him in C tier as well. He's not going to surprise you or wow you with his mobility, but he can get the job done if he has to. Then we have Jimmy Garoppolo. I'm not going to count Trey Lance. Trey Lance would probably be A to potentially S tier, but we're going to go with Jimmy. And like, there was one game he had like 2 runs for 7 yards and 2 touchdowns. But he only seems to really run a whole lot like near the goal line. I think he belongs in D tier with Tom Brady. Jimmy Garoppolo is just not a great rusher. And the more I think about it, I'm thinking of putting Jared Goff in D tier as well. He kind of seems a lot like Garoppolo, but I'll leave him there for right now. Then we have Teddy Bridgewater. He's one kind of like a Tyrod. As his career has gone on, he's kind of lost his mobility a bit. But he still can run, but not quite the way he used to. I think I'll put him in B tier, kind of similar to Jameis, in my opinion. Then we have Matthew Stafford. And I believe he had like a 13-yard run earlier in the season, but, he kind of seems a bit like Brady, maybe a little bit more athletic than him. But, he's he might be, other than Brady, might be, no. There's another one down here that's below them. Potentially he may be even below Brady, the one that I'm looking at, which you probably can tell who that is. But we'll wait to discuss him whenever he comes. But just looking at Stafford's rushing stats, 23 runs for 38 yards so far in this season. I think Stafford will go to D tier. He's not a very good rushing quarterback. Then I'm going to go with Justin Fields. He's actually a pretty good rusher. Potentially S tier, but I don't know. He doesn't seem quite on the same level as these quarterbacks right here. So he's going to be high A tier. Could move into S tier. Lamar Jackson, without a doubt, S tier. Probably the best one. The only one that could really compete with him is maybe Kyler. But I think Lamar is number 1. Then we have Big Ben, D tier. Enough said. Matt Ryan, kind of similar to Goff, Cousins, those kind of quarterbacks. He does take off sometimes if he has to. Checking out his rushing stats on the season. I feel like Matt Ryan, he still has a bit more speed than someone like Stafford or Brady. On the season for him rushing, just 17 carries for 37 yards, but he has a 17-yard run on the season, which I believe tied for the 3rd longest of his career. So he's still got the wheels, but I'll put him in C tier. He's not quite on the level of these quarterbacks, I feel. Then we have Carson Wentz, again, another one who's deteriorated with age, but I think he goes to B tier. He was probably A tier at his prime, but after injuries and stuff have taken their toll, he doesn't run as much, but he still can get the job done. Like, watch his escapability in that play against the Bills where he escaped a sack. He can still take off. Then we have Mac Jones, C tier. If you're wondering about Cam Newton, he still is A tier. But Mac Jones goes to C tier. He can run more than I thought he could. Like, I saw him take off for like a 12, 13-yard run, and I was like, man, Mac Jones is faster than I thought. But yeah, he goes to C tier. And then lastly, we have Trevor Lawrence, which he can take off and run. He just, kind of like Zach Wilson, doesn't do it as much as he did in college. So for that, I will put him in B tier. But yeah, that's our tier list ranking of all the quarterbacks based on their mobility. As you can tell, kind of the ones you would expect. Jones, Allen, Murray, Hurts, and Lamar are all S tier. And it kind of goes down as you would expect. But, yeah, that's how I would rank the quarterbacks in the NFL based on their mobility. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. This was a bit of a different one for me to do. I don't know if I've really seen anything like this on YouTube, so hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you want to see more tier lists, be sure to let me know which ones you would want to see, and I will be sure to check them out and do them. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one. Goodbye.